Tonight is Monday, May 14th, 2018. This is the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Peter. It is 7 o'clock p.m. We will call the meeting to order. Would all please join in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everyone should have a copy of the agenda in front of them. Are there any changes or corrections to the agenda? If not, is there a motion for approval?
Approval. Second.
All in favor of the agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Agenda is approved. Next up, we have our minutes from our April 23rd, 2018 meeting. Those minutes appear on pages 5 through 9. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? If not, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of the minutes as written, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Next, we will address visitors. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any agenda item? Seeing no one, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any matter whatsoever? If you do, please raise your hand, and you can come up, give us your name and home address, and we will listen to all of you that want to speak. We're going to try to limit it, each one, to 5 minutes. So.
Good evening.
And you may want to pull the microphone down a little bit, I'm not sure, so, thanks.
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Cynthia Favor. My address is 1406 Wilkinson Court here in St. Peter. And we appreciate the opportunity to be able to meet with the council tonight. I very much wanted to be here because just last Thursday, we were surprised and indeed shocked to hear that the City of St. Peter is planning to remove the line of mature trees that border Warren Park because of a 45-foot strip of land west of the tree line that was recently acquired. In a community that has just recently celebrated our 20th anniversary of a major tornado where many trees were lost, residents of our standard subdivision, along with others in St. Peter, are very much opposed to the removal of this tree line of mature trees. This opposition is evidenced by the 100 signatures on the petition that was shared with you. I believe that was distributed. And also, I want to let you know that some of the residents in our neighborhood are here tonight, and so I ask those who are here to stand so that the council knows who we are. Thank you. We are very much opposed to this tragic plan to remove those mature trees. We are glad to hear that the city has received the additional parkland and that they should have received years ago from the developers of the Ends addition. However, with no immediate plans for an expansion of the division and no apparent functional use for the 45-foot wide strip of land, we emphasize once again our strong opposition to the removal of the trees at this time. Some additional reasons. One, the tree line adds to the quality of life for all who live in the standard subdivision, both visually and physically. It is a windbreak and a barrier from the field's dirt and harvest debris. Two, the tree line makes for a more quality experience for those who currently use Warren Park. Many users of the park were interviewed this weekend, and they said that they would much prefer to have the tree line than an open field. Some of the reasons they gave were for a windbreak on cooler days, shade on hot summer evenings, and just overall more pleasing setting for a park. It is not a good use of city's financial resources to remove mature trees that do not need to be removed, and then seed and maintain a strip of land that does not yet have a functional purpose. It is clear that the residents of St. Peter do not support the cutting of the tree line, and therefore we kindly ask the City Council to put a stop to this tragic plan. And again, we thank you for your time and look forward to a favorable outcome to this matter.
Okay. Thank you. You want, oh. Cynthia?
No, can I ask the
Oh,
city
I'm sorry, I thought
administrator?
John had a question. I'm sorry, I thought.
Did you have questions for me?
No, I'm
Okay.
sorry, I thought
I
you
had a
did.
question,
Just in general, no, sorry.
question for city administrator. Why are we cutting trees?
We are-
We don't have a plan to cut trees. I think we will have a plan at some point on how to additionally develop the park with the land that you've acquired that we should have acquired about 30 years ago. I think our plan,
The land we acquired was owned by somebody else.
correct, but it should have been provided to the city as a part of the development of the area.
Well, they haven't developed the area.
Some of the area is developed, John.
Okay. How much land are we acquiring?
Ooh, it's less than an acre.
Oh.
I don't know
6, 7,
exactly.
the map, if you
Yeah,
get anything,
yeah.
0.67 acres.
Okay.
No.
But what our plans now for that additional land are, we have none?
It will be part of a park, part of Warren Park.
Well, part of Warren
Beyond that,
Park.
there's not any specific plan, John.
So before we would make a plan for this additional land or changing Warren Park, what's the process?
The first process would be to review what the parks plan says about additional utilization of the park, what amenities might be able to be provided there.
Who does that review?
That would be done by staff with the Parks Board,
Okay, which has 11 members.
which has 11 members.
Okay, and then, after it's reviewed?
And they would either modify the parks plan or make recommendation to the city council as to what would go on, whether there was the addition of playground equipment, whatever it might be.
And at what point then do the local people who utilize the park have input into this?
They would have input in a couple of different ways. Certainly, it would be something that would be a part of the Parks Board agenda. It would certainly be part of something that would be,
When it's part of the Parks Board agenda, are people notified, or they just have to, or how do they find out?
well, there would be a couple of ways. We notice the Parks Board meetings on your website. They aren't noticed separately from that. That's the primary source. They are posted notice down at City Hall, and so the agenda items are articulated there. Typically, we have a calendar on our website that indicates when things are happening, whether it's a Parks Board meeting or planning and zoning meeting.
So it's likely people that are following this issue would become aware of this, that coming up to be reviewed at the Parks Board meeting.
Yeah,
Okay, and this one at the Parks Board meeting, then you talk about it and come up with a plan and then make recommendations to the council.
correct,
Then the council does it in public too.
correct,
And the council then can have more input from the public.
correct.
But right now, we're not cutting anything down.
Right now, we're not cutting anything down.
Okay. It's confusing to me.
Me too. No one called me today about it, John.
Okay.
I'm surprised by that.
I drove out there today and looked at it. I drove to the point and, looked at it. And there's stakes out there that run the strip, or it's been staked.
To mark off the
The-
land that we're acquiring.
Right, the 0.67 acres, but there wasn't any trees taken down. Now, we're going to hear from some other people. There's some trees, to me, I'm not a forester, but there's some trees in there that should be taken out, from my opinion, because they're just little scrub things that are,
It's a good thing you're not the one deciding.
yeah, but I know, but there's little scrub trees that are underneath there that just are serving no purpose whatsoever, but, except for maybe a windbreak, but it's just, there's some of them that are not good for the health of the other trees. So, anyway, Mr. Drager.
Sounds like the discussion going on, maybe I don't need to talk, but I would like to anyway. Thank you very much for hearing me out. My name is Craig Drager. I reside at 1404 Wilkinson Court. My family home abuts Warren Park. And I'm here this evening because I heard what Cindy did, that there was going to be a major change to Warren Park, that trees were going to be cut down. And I'm here to ask all of you to make sure that does not happen. My family moved into this home 18 years ago. And the largest reason for us buying that home was because of Warren Park in our backyard, but more importantly, the wooded area, the tree line that abuts it. It gives us privacy and provides us with wildlife like you can't believe. Now, we were told when we bought this home that eventually there would be an expansion, that the road would continue on to Nicollet Avenue, that there could, somewhere down the road, we saw blueprints that showed that the tree line would still be there, and there may even be another park similar to the one we have now on the east side of the woods that would be on the west side of the woods. So we thought this would be a safe place for us to raise our family and live. During these 18 years, I've had the opportunity to see families frequent the park. I've been able to see how they spend their time there. And I want you to know that a number of families walk the tree line and gather wild raspberries. The young people spend more time in the woods playing, building forts, hide and seek, clubhouses. They spend more time there than they do on some of the playground equipment that's there. Now, I think all of us know that in this day and age, the young people are consumed with technology, as many of us are also. And so we need green space for our kids. But green space does not necessarily mean a plot of grass. It means a tree to climb. It needs a bush to hide behind. And right now, that tree line in Warren Park provides an ideal setting for the youth. Being there for 18 years has also given my family and I the opportunity to see the wildlife that live in this tree line. And I'm here to tell you that we've watched a mother fox raise 2 kits. We know that there's a hoot owl that resides in the southwest corner, and on most evenings you can hear the hoot owl sounding off. We have seen a Cooper's hawk raise her young and show them how to hunt. Excuse me. We've watched numerous deer walk in, around, and through the woods, not to mention a number of other small furry animals. And last but not least, Jerry, you'll love this, the birds are wonderful. They nest there, they perch there, and they visit all of our homes in the neighborhood. Now, if those trees are removed, you can virtually wipe out all of what I've just talked about, because there will be no families gathering wild raspberries, and there will be no young people building forts and hiding out in the tree line, and who knows where the wildlife will end up having to go. Now, I think you talked about it, and all of us in this room know that there are, what kind of trees are in that tree line. There's a name for them, and I won't use them here. But they're probably not the trees that we would go to Traverse des Sioux to buy to put into our backyards. But this community, as all of us know, we've survived a tornado. And we fought back hard. And our community looks beautiful. Trees are hard to come by. And they are trees, no matter how you look at them. And I don't think any of us on the petition or sitting in this room or living in the addition would argue with the fact that that tree line could stand a preening, a manicure, just a good old-fashioned cleanup. And I think if the city's willing to do that, fine. If they're not or not able to, all you have to do is ask your neighbors, and you would find a host of volunteers. When we were traveling the last 3 days visiting with our neighbors, many of them said if it needs to be cleaned up, all they have to do is holler and we'll be there to help. And on my way down here, I thought about one thing, and that was that I love the parks in this town. I brag about the parks in this town. And you can go through every park and all of them have a unique part. I mean, it's the memorial that's now being put up, it's the band shell, it's the river, it's the frisbee golf, it's the bicycle paths. I mean, you name it, they all have a unique part. Warren Park's got one too, and that is that tree line that's existing there right now. So I'll ask you once again, please make sure that our tree line stays there. And I want to thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight.
Just for clarification, when I said before, what I was looking at today, there was
Oh, yeah.
trees like this that, no raspberries on them or anything like that,
Absolutely.
but they should be somehow taken back a little bit. That's what I was
Yeah,
referring to.
many of us have walked the tree line and walked through the tree line
Right.
just recently, saw the same thing you
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was referring to
Yeah,
earlier.
thank you.
All right, thank you, Craig. Anyone else? If not, we will move on from there, and I just want to assure everyone, thank you for coming and your concern. Like I say, we're not here to come up there tomorrow, and even in the next near future, to start tearing down trees without a lot more input than what, and I guess I'm going to apologize however this all got kind of stirred up, but, that those things happened. And,
How will we be informed as a neighborhood? We need to go to the park website to?
yeah, I would just keep in touch with the city postings, when this comes up. I don't know, is there anyone in that neighborhood that's, I can't remember, on the Parks Board?
I'd have to
Steve
look.
Huh?
Steve Elger.
Steve Elger is on the Parks Board. So,
And then if we wanted to clean it up, do we do that and ask for forgiveness, or do we?
I wouldn't start cleaning it up right now. I would,
But Corey, based on the offer, don't be afraid if a couple of you get a call. I mean, until there's grass established on that other side, there's not an intent to do anything imminently. I don't see anything for a year or two. There's a lot of other things that have to go on. That's not a very high priority.
But we have professionals, right, whose backyard butts to the park, who.
Yeah, but we're not talking professional bankers.
No. Professionals who actually.
Oh.
work for us.
Oh, all right. I thought you were talking about bankers. All right. So, thank you again. I see all of you around, we will be in touch, and you will be informed, or not informed, but there will be plenty of notices as to what's going on and notifications.
Call anytime.
So, Susie, just a second,
I-
sir.
I just want to clarify. So there's nothing about this on tonight's agenda, so we're not going to have any further discussion about it at this point. But folks can look on the website and see when the next park board meetings take place, and certainly can come and listening in at that time. But there's no action being taken here
No.
at this point or this evening.
And the Parks Board, the agenda's there and everything, but, they meet once a month. So like I say, it's not going to jump right out in a short little notice or anything like that, so. All right. Thank you all for your time and your concern. It's very much appreciated. We like to see people here, and input. We really do. That means you care.
And the rest of the stuff on the agenda is riveting, so I would suggest you all hang around.
Thank you. Next up, we have Next up, we have the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins in detail on page 10 and concludes with the resolution on pages 33 and 34, and includes the following budgeted purchases in excess of $7,500 to JT Services for 70 16-foot aluminum street light poles at a price of $18,543, to St. Croix Recreation for 3 powder-coated pedestal water fountains for $11,419.60, to BSN Sports for 4 5-row 15-foot bleachers for $12,927.25, to JT Services again for streetlight foundations, 70 of them, for $17,080. The following license renewals: temporary gambling license for the St. Peter Chamber of Commerce for Minnesota Square Park for the 4th of July, to Gustavus at 800 West College for October 6, 2018 and 12/14, 2018, peddler license for Fabian Seafood at 624 South Minnesota from April 1st to September 30th, 2018, tree worker license to Hack Tree Service from May 15th to April 30th, 2019, temporary soft drink licenses, St. Peter Ambassadors for Minnesota Square Park for June 9th, 2018, St. Peter Chamber of Commerce for Minnesota Square Park on July 4th, 2018, temporary on-sale liquor license to St. Peter Ambassadors, Minnesota Square Park on June 9th, Redmond Club for 412 South 3rd for July 3rd, 2018, to St. Peter Chamber of Commerce, Minnesota Square Park for July 4th, temporary show license to St. Peter Ambassadors for Minnesota Square Park for June 9th, 2018. Temporary dance license for Redmond Club at 412 South 3rd Street for July 3rd, 2018 and August 18th, 2018. And finally, a fireworks permit to the Redmond Club for 401 Union for July 4th, 2018. The following seasonal employee contract wage correction, or employee wage correction. Frank Drzinski for Public Works seasonal labor at $10.75 per hour. Nicole Ruland is hereby appointed as the outdoor pool manager for the 2018 season at the salary of $11,400 paid over 8 installments. The following council members are appointed to serve on the 2018 Hospital Expansion Project Building Committee. That would be myself, Mayor Zeman, and Council Member Pfeiffer, plus the regular schedule of disbursements for April 19th, 2018 through May 9th, 2018. Is there any questions or comments about the consent agenda? Ed?
Got one question, just curious. On page 22, Todd, Good Times Manufacturing for shirts.
Let's see, 22, you said, Ed?
And you're talking about on the bottom there?
Yep,
Summer rec soccer shirts?
yep. Is that a local company or?
I believe it is a Mankato company.
Okay.
Good time hell there.
I just never heard of it before, and I know we got a couple businesses in St. Peter that do shirts and so forth.
Our process over the past years, and Ed, I'd have to go back and check on this one, but in past years has to solicit from the local companies, stop in and say, here's what we're doing. Other t-shirts that you'll see come through here would include for all the t-ball teams.
Yep.
And that's typically what happens for us.
Okay, as long as they're asked and so forth.
Yeah,
that's-
on occasions, we've had folks that sell them here tell us, we'd rather you just go to where we're gonna get them from.
Okay. Okay, just curious. Thank you.
Steve?
Todd, on the letter that you got, page 16, you talk about a Nicole Ruland and that you've been pleased with her performance. How many years has she worked over at the library, or I mean at the?
Now, that's a question to give me a heads up on because I can't remember exactly, but I'd hazard to guess that it's more than 10.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Okay, I'm just curious, I just was
Yeah.
curious, I don't know who that is, but.
Yeah, she's been the pool manager for a number of years here.
Okay, all right.
If you want to know exactly, I'm happy to look it up, but I
No,
just don't
I
know
am
off the
just-
top of my head.
I was just curious, it was
Yeah.
2 years, 3 years, or, okay,
More than 10, I'm confident.
all right, okay.
Okay. Anyone else? The consent agenda appears on pages 33 and 34. Is there a motion for approval?
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Second it.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Next, we have unfinished business, and we have Mr. Moulton with the 2017 Jefferson Avenue Gardner Road project change order number 1.
Mayor
Pete.
Zeman and City Council, as you guys are aware, we have completed the work out there. We are in the process of finalizing that project, but it'll take another two years before we are going to final that project because of the type of grass and prairie land that we planted along there. It has an extended warranty and growth period. However, there is one outstanding issue out there the contractor would like to get paid for. We're asking that you approve change order number 1 for $3,938.40 for 2 items in specific that weren't covered by the contract. That's for erosion control blanket that we had to use along the steep banks adjacent to the Chuck Winter Farm so that we could keep the roadway stabilized along there. We thought maybe the seeding and the blasting that we did on the side of the road there would hold everything in place. It did not. It was too steep, and so we added the erosion control blanket to guarantee the grass growth. We also had an area of 4-inch bituminous patch, which was really more labor intensive than it was materials replacement along Jefferson Avenue where we had ADA transition changes in order to accommodate the roadway. So what we're asking for is that you approve the change order. These funds will come from our MSA and general fund budgets.
Questions? Not. The resolution authorizing change order for the 2017 Jefferson Avenue Gardner Road project appears on page 37. Is there a motion for approval?
Move the resolution, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Now, any questions? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye. Resolution passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Next up, we have Todd. I think you're going to handle this, the transit drug and alcohol policy update.
Mr. Mayor, I am. Members, this is an item that you talked about at a previous workshop setting. As you know, the Minnesota Department of Transportation, the Office of Transportation, provides oversight and review of policies and provides model policies. This is one of those policies that we adopted quite some time ago. Because of the more national and federal recognition of the opioid crisis, modification of the policies has been promulgated by the Office of Transportation, and they've suggested some slight modifications for us. Certainly these are things that you can choose or not choose to do, but it seems prudent that we do them. They all seem to make sense. So they really fall into 2 primary categories, one of which is changing the language from opiates within the policy to opioids. That's the primary modification that you'll see. Secondary to that, you'll see some clarifications that are suggested by them related to the type of testing, the pass-fail levels for both drug and alcohol testing within the body of the policy. If there was one third one, I'd also mentioned that within the body of the document, we now stipulate more clearly what type of alcohol test will be provided. It's a breath alcohol test, so the word breath has been added in a number of places within the body of the policy. This comes to you even though you don't technically run transit any longer through MRVT, and this only applies to your transit folks, not the rest of your licensed folks, but your transit folks. As you may recall, your joint powers agreement with MRVT is that you provide all the labor for that effort through Minnesota River Valley Transit, and so you're required then to have the appropriate policies as a part of that, and so that's why this comes to you this evening. So staff recommends approval, and again, to clarify, this is just for the transit employees. This isn't across the board for all your commercial driver's license. There haven't been the same changes there as we've seen in the federal transportation rules. Information's included on your packet, as is the entire policy. We would certainly fill in the appropriate dates if you provide approval for it, and employees would get notification as a part of the normal process of them checking in and out for work. And the resolution approving this is on page 63.
Questions? John?
I have a question. Todd, this new policy from MnDOT only applies to those who are involved in safety-sensitive procedures for having to do with mass transit. So that's our buses and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. It does not apply to everybody else with a commercial driver's license. Is this something, now that they have done this, they will then move on and start considering doing something similar for those with commercial licenses?
John, I haven't heard any discussion about that. I think it's possible, but I haven't heard any discussion from DOT or others related to that.
It would make as much sense for them as it does for these. It would be more work, it covers more people, but they operate heavy equipment out on public streets also.
Just as a point of clarification, John, you had mentioned that this was a new policy. This is a modification of the policy you've had in
Yes.
place. I just didn't want people to think we're pushing a new policy. This is
Okay.
updating the policy you have in place.
Todd, I remember in workshop, one of the main things that changed was some verbiage concerning how to do blood tests or alcohol blood tests. Wasn't that the biggest, one of the biggest thing?
So there's a little bit of clarification. No change in the threshold
Right.
in which somebody would be found bail passed, but there's a little clarification, and again, that language with breath alcohol testing. The previous policy just talked about alcohol testing. Now we specify what kind of alcohol testing is going to go on.
All right.
A BAT, breath alcohol test, is what's done.
Okay. All right. Steve?
Are these restrictions more are they stricter than the general public?
Certainly.
Okay,
Oh, very much so.
okay.
Clearly, the tolerance level of the city council here and of the Department of Transportation is that folks that are charged with driving others around can't have any substance use or alcohol use.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Anyone else? The resolution adopting the updated Federal Transit Administration drug and alcohol testing policy for the City of St. Peter Transit employees appears on page 63. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved?
Is there a
Second.
second? Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brand,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Grahams,
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer,
Aye.
Councilmember Quaney,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Resolution is approved.
Mr. Mayor, if I could mention one other thing, just for the council and the public, we mentioned this at workshop, but I think it's important to reiterate. You have a very regimented, robust alcohol and drug testing plan, and we are audited on it on a regular basis by the Minnesota Department of Transportation. So policies like this, the kind of testing you do, the results from the testing, even the time and the days of the week when testing occurs to make sure that they're varied or random, are all things that they look for. So you have a very robust policy, and folks should feel really good about the folks that are driving them around.
In the in the appendix here on pages 61 and 62, I think I read that at any given time, 2 to 3% of the general vehicles on the road have substance impaired drivers. So I guess the flip side of this is that we should all be very afraid of everybody else on the road, but the city is doing as best as it can to control our drivers. But that was a very remarkable statistic to me.
Anybody else? I guess we were done with this one, but.
Yeah, thank
if
you,
not-
Mr.
All right. Next up, we have a transit wage scale approval.
Mayor and members, this again was talked about at a workshop. There are a number of different reasons why we're looking to do this, but I'm recommending to you that we establish a wage scale for the transportation support specialists. These are those folks that are dispatchers, and they have a number of duties with you, a number of roles as a part of MRVT. These folks, too, again, are not employees of MRVT, they're employees of the City of St. Peter. Our goal has been multifold, one of which is to make sure that we have a standardized pay system for these folks. Before, St. Peter didn't have dispatchers or transit support specialists. The drivers kind of did all of that, and so that's no longer the case any longer. It's nice to have a clear understanding policy related to how pay works for those folks. And with the combination of the Windsor employees and the St. Peter employees all together into one system now, I think it's important that as we've transferred folks back and forth that we provide clarity for how this pay occurs. I think it's also important to note that because of that, we have one person that's paid outside of this range and would continue to be grandfathered in. Last but not least, we do have, on occasion, challenges with scheduling. And one of our efforts has been to be able to move drivers into that dispatching role. There's not an additional licensing required. That's why support specialists couldn't move into a bus. They got to have the right license and the right background check and the right drug and alcohol testing, where support specialists don't. So they could move that direction. And having a unified pay system for jobs within your pay system that have comparable worth or pay equity points that were within 1 or 2 points of each other seems logical and reasonable. And so that's why we're recommending that this pay scale for the transit support specialists be very similar, in fact, exactly like your part-time bus drivers. The information is included in your packet, and the resolution is on page 66.
Questions? Resolution establishing wage scale for transit support specialist position, as Todd said, appears on page 66. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Piper.
Aye.
Councilmember Pawnee.
Aye.
Mayor Zimmerman.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have a resolution approving a business license application.
Mayor and members, as you may recall, your policy is that renewal licenses go on your consent agenda and new licenses come to you as a separate action item. That's why this comes to you. As you can read from the information provided on page 67, Northern Tier Retail, doing business as Super America number 5046 is in the process of purchasing, well, what we commonly know as the Holiday Store here on the north end of town. And to that end, they need the appropriate license. One of the biggest ones, or ones that you do not have sole control over, is the 3-2 beer license. So it's important that we have a resolution on record that states the appropriate date for that transfer to take place. What you see in your packet is the resolution that provides for tobacco, soft drink, and the 3-2 beer license. Just to make it a little bit simpler too, since we don't know exactly when the transfer of the business operation, the operational transfer will occur, you're giving us a little bit of latitude to make sure we fill in the blanks when the appropriate time is known and comes to us. Information, again, is in your packet with the resolution on page 69.
Questions? Todd, maybe I'm getting the cart in front of the horse here, but if they're asking for, since we'll be talking again here soon on this tobacco 21, out of full disclosure, do we need to let them know that?
I'll have to look within the state statute. I don't believe that's the case because we have appropriately noticed the folks that are licensed currently. My recollection of the state statute is those licensed currently have a notification requirement.
Okay, all right. Questions? The resolution approving a new business license application appears on page 69. Is there a motion for approval?
Move the resolution, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a second? Thank you, Jeff. Any other questions? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Koenig.
Aye.
Mayor Ziegler.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have a hospital equipment purchase request. And Mr. Rorich, how are you tonight?
Good evening. Thank you for considering our request for a Mindray anesthesia machine model A7. You might recall about 2 years ago I came before you and we purchased our first. As you can see from our memo, we're now integrating this into our electronic health record, and we need to upgrade at least for the two functioning ORs pretty quickly. So we're just in time with our request to get this equipment in place for integration into our greater health record. First one's working great. Ultimately, at some point, we'll have 3 or 4 of these, but today we're buying them as we need them. Hospital funds will pay for the equipment. There isn't competitive bidding because it's unique to this family, this technology. Questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I can.
Yes.
George, this is one of my favorite pieces of equipment that you bring in front of us. It just fascinates me that an anesthesia machine with a brand called Mindray comes in front of us. It's just fascinating to me.
It's reminiscent of the 50s or the 60s, isn't it?
Some of us experience those, but not all of us here. I wanted to point out to the viewing public, I guess, to everyone, that the hospital commission approves this, and then, but you have to come to us because of it's over the $35,000 threshold that the hospital commission can do. So that's why you're here tonight.
Correct. There's actually a number of steps. Initially, administration or management, compiles this based off of a greater budget total or section of money that we anticipate spending for the year. Then it goes to the finance committee. Finance committee goes through all the details of this and recommends it to the hospital commission. Commission then receives that.
I'm sorry to interrupt me, the Hospital Finance Committee.
The hospital finance committee, yes. And then they bring it forward to the commission. Commission considers it, recommends it to the city council. So 3 or 4 steps in there, all told.
Right. So it isn't just throwing it at us and taking care of all that. So, Jeff?
Yeah, in here it talked about the group purchasing organization discount, and that was about $46,000, which is amazing.
Yeah.
How do we get access to that, and what makes us so special?
Well, nothing really, just being a member of the GPO, the group purchasing organization. We've always been a member of group purchasing organizations. It leverages us. It combines us with 50 or 100 or 200 other hospitals that do then group buys or leverage that buying power with the manufacturers.
Is there a membership that we pay for that or anything like that?
Not currently, no. This particular GPO Health Trust is new to us, and we brought this on when we signed up with a 1-year consulting agreement with QHR. Long term, if we were to end that agreement, I think we would pay about $2,000 a year going forward to continue membership.
Okay.
See, and here I brought this up a couple of years ago, I think. I always thought you clipped a coupon and you
Yeah.
turned it in, but evidently that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, the discount's breathtaking.
It is.
We're very grateful for it.
So, the resolution approving the purchase of the anesthesia machine for Rivers Edge Hospital and Clinic appears on page 71. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second it.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Koenig.
Aye.
Mayor Ziegler.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Thank you, George.
Groundbreaking tomorrow. Got cookies.
We'll be there.
Thank you.
Cookies?
What?
Now John will be there. Now, you had to say that, didn't you? Next up, we have Russ with the Windsor Pond 3rd edition.
Yeah, Mayor, members of the City Council, in 2002, John Pupkus, Don McManus, and Don Meredith organized Valley View Land Company to undertake the development of Windsor Pond subdivision. In 2002, they developed 22 single-family lots and the associated road improvements, utility extensions, and some stormwater improvements. By 2004, they were substantially complete with that part of Windsor Pond, so they initiated Phase 2, or Windsor Pond Second Edition, creating an additional 34 single-family lots. These are the slab-on-grade patio homes that are predominantly provided to the senior market. The development has continued. Earlier this past year, Mike Volk had purchased the undeveloped assets from Valley View Land Company, and Mike organized Windsor Homes LLC to undertake that endeavor. And Mike Volk has paid the appropriate fee for consideration of a preliminary and final plat of Windsor Pond Third Edition. Mr. Volk, in the preliminary plat, would intend to create an additional 14 single-family lots, of which he is disclosed that he has a number of those pre-sold and ready for development. The balance of the property would be contained within Outlot A, Windsor Pond Third Edition, and again, for your information, an outlot cannot be independently developed until it has undertaken its own platting process through a preliminary and final plat. The plat provides for walkway connectivity through the development to the north, or to the south rather, where it would terminate at the Church of St. Peter property. Public Works is in discussions with Father Todd of the St. Peter Catholic Church, discussing the provision of an easement to provide pedestrian connectivity outside of Windsor Pond through the Catholic Church property and then connecting back with Sunrise Drive. The lots that would be created range in size from 7,767 square feet to 24,214 square feet, so it provides quite a variety. The plat would create a small extension of Windsor Lane, which would be consistent with the plat that was the preliminary plat that was approved in 2002. It provides for the extension of water, sewer, and stormwater services that have been approved as designed by the Department of Public Works. The Planning Commission considered the preliminary and final plat at a meeting on March 1st. Subsequent to published, posted, and mailed notice, a public hearing was held. At the hearing, we heard from Mr. Volk and his engineer. We heard representatives of Public Works, but no members of the general public appeared before the Planning Commission to comment either in favor or in opposition to the plat. Mr. Mayor, the Planning Commission, at the conclusion of that meeting, has recommended that the City Council approve the preliminary plat of Windsor Pond Third Edition as petitioned by Windsor Home LLC. And I'd answer any questions that you may have. And if I may explain, you're asked to take two actions tonight. One would be to approve the preliminary plat. The second would be to approve the final plat and the associated agreement for development.
Questions? The resolution for accepting the preliminary plat of Windsor Pond Third Edition appears on page 107. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Quaney.
Aye.
Mayor Zimmerman.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Favor.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the resolution for the final plat and the development agreement. Russ?
Yep, Mr. Mayor, the final plat presented to you reflects the preliminary plat. The difference is the preliminary plat provides a little bit more explanation with some of the disclosures on the map. The final plat then is in the form that's recordable with the county recorder's office. Again, the Planning Commission has recommended that you approve the final plat of the 14 lots and associated road and utility extensions. And when we do a plat, Mr. Mayor, it's typically we'd have a development agreement. And so I've drafted a development agreement with Windsor Homes LLC for your consideration, and it is included in your packet. The meat and potatoes is the Exhibit B improvements. So that's the detailed engineering of the utility installations, the roadway improvements, how to install a manhole, what the type of sewer grate you're going to use. And those have been reviewed and approved by the Public Works Department as to meeting all of your standards of the detailed plates and other utility standards that the City Council and City have put into place. The development agreement would also obligate that Windsor Home pays up to $1,000 in legal expenses, and as we would receive billings from the city attorney, then we would invoice Windsor Home. It would obligate Windsor Home to pay $11,363 in parkland dedications fees based upon the contents of your subdivision ordinance. Windsor Pond Third Edition would propose to have 4.73 gross acres of land, you remove the rights-of-way and the roads, and you are left with a net developable area of 3.83 acres. For a residential subdivision, the subdivision ordinance requires a parkland dedication equal to 12%. And in this case, given there's no park in the area to be expanded, it would be appropriate for the city council to accept the cash value in lieu of. So we take the resulting acreage and times that times the per acre cost that or Windsor Home rather paid for the property, and it comes up to a parkland dedication of $11,363. The second development agreement that was undertaken with Valley View rather included the provision for future payment for a future regional stormwater pond that would be planned at the 40 acres that is currently owned, I believe, by the Pell interests at the intersection of Sunrise Drive and Traverse Road. The city has a very small pond up in the northwest corner of that 40 acres at this point, but as development would happen at that area and to the west of there, it would be imperative to expand that pond rather. The intent would be to establish a regional pond that would serve a much larger drainage area, and so as such to prepay for the cost of that regional pond, as was done in the second development agreement with Valley View. Windsor Home LLC would be required to pay $9,208.46 towards a future regional stormwater pond. That would leave a balance of $15,302 that would be paid as additional improvements or plats are filed for Outlot A Windsor Pond 3rd Edition. And as that would be developed, additional regional stormwater assessment fees would be paid at $1,946.82 per acre. Finally, the development agreement would require Windsor Homes to pay the first $1,000 of repair if the bituminous lift is to be provided in 2 lifts. So if they leave 1 lift down over the winter, just what was done in Welco West, the developer will pay the first $1,000 to repair the curb and the gutter. Because you don't have that final lift, you've got a little gap between the top of the road and your curb, and sometimes the plows hit that and chew it up. So Mr. Volk hasn't determined whether he will do 2 lifts at once or it will be 1 lift followed by another one in the spring, and he'll leave that up to his contractor. But if it is done in 2 and there's damage, we are covered. Mr. Volk has reviewed the proposed development agreement and has consented to the terms and conditions, and to that end, he has provided a signed copy of the agreement, which has been notarized before you would consider it, so as there would be no negotiating at the city council meeting. Again, Mr. Mayor, I would answer any questions that you or members of the council may have.
Questions?
I have one. On page 81, where it talks about the regional stormwater improvements, there is a specific amount that they're required to pay now, the $9,208, and then there's an additional amount of $15,302 that they'll be required to pay in the future when they develop Outlot A. And we know those specific amounts because stormwater improvement dedication funds are based on a per acre basis. And we know how many acres it is, so we know the exact dollar they'll be required to pay in the future, and then in this agreement, they're agreeing to pay that. The paragraph above that is a parkland dedication, and they're required to pay $11,300. You went explained on 3 acres and all that sort of stuff. And they will be required to pay parkland dedication when Outlot A is developed in the future, but they don't know the amount now because you don't know how much of it will be taken up by streets and all this sort of stuff, and how much will be net developable. But why doesn't it mention that it will exist? They will be owing something. Why isn't that in the development agreement?
That's included in the subdivision ordinance, whereas the future regional pond assessments are not included as one of your ordinances.
Okay, so we're covered from that direction. Makes sense. Thank you.
Anyone else? Steve?
Todd, the parkland dedication fee of $11,300, is that deposited into some type of a fund that has safeguards so it's not used for something else?
It's called donuts.
We don't want any donuts. But is it for cookies or?
No, that fund is put into parkland dedication funds, and so that's a separate fund that the city council maintains, and that when we provide for or recommend expenditures, we specifically indicate to you that it comes out of those funds.
Do you know what that balance is now in that fund?
Again, a question, yeah, that's not one that I know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but we'll be happy to look that up and send that to you. It's just not an
Yeah, I'm
answer that I
just-
maintain in my
Can
memory.
Can you give us an estimate in dozens of donuts?
I cannot.
Never
Depends on the
mind.
kind of donut.
Jeff has the number answers all the time. Jeff, what's in?
I'll be happy to get that looked up and send that to you. It's just not one that I
Okay.
maintain in my memory.
Good cookies or cheap donuts?
On
If I
from the
could clarify,
cookies.
Mr. Mayor, the parkland dedication will be paid before the plat is recorded. The stormwater fees will be paid before a building permit is issued to begin the public improvements.
Good.
The resolution accepting the final plat of Windsor Pond Third Edition and authorizing execution of the development agreement appears on pages 108 and 109. Is there a motion for approval?
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Grahams.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Quinn.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Thank you, Russ. Next up, we have the 2018 crack sealing project bid, and Mr. Moulton is back with us.
Mayor Zeman and City Council, we received formal bids for this work again this year. Part of our street maintenance package includes crack sealing. We do a variety of crack sealing on residential, collector, and subcollector streets. Very competitive bids for us this year, anywhere between $1.40 and $2.70 per pound of material used. We had 3 bidders that were very, very close. We have for you on page 112 a list of the streets that we're planning to work on. Our crews will prioritize those streets and start working with the toughest ones first, and then work on complete sections. We do have some collector streets, like I mentioned. Those will be on top of the priority. We anticipate at a maximum we'll be able to do them all. At a minimum, we might only get 50 or 60 blocks completed based on what we've seen so far. Usually, we've got about 2 months' worth of inspection to look at these roadways. And with the late winter this year, we only had about a month, and so we're hoping that our priority numbers are coming out okay. We did take formal bids for these, and we're asking that you approve the resolution on page 114.
Questions? The resolution awarding the bid for the 2018 street crack sealing project, Pete said, appears on page 114. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any questions now? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Grahams.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Quinn.
Aye.
And Mayor Zeman.
Aye. Resolution passes. Thanks again, Pete. Next up, we have Todd and the Parks Board membership modification.
Mayor, members, this discussion started back in 2017 with the review, which you have on an annual basis of boards and commissions. You take a look at what are they doing, how are they working, how's the membership, what's the expertise, do we have attendance issues, all those kind of things are part of your discussion, and that was wrapped up within a goal-setting session. At that time, you directed staff to take a look at the Parks Board and see whether there was any vacant slots, and there was a vacant slot, and you indicated that you wanted to make a modification that would essentially transfer one slot that was made for citizen appointment to a second appointment for a city council member. There's no other modifications really within the body of this ordinance because you previously had a council member in place. So this appointment too would be for, well, ends at the end of the year, for a year at a time, for reappointment either at December and to take office or to hold seat in January. Again, a very small modification. I will tell you that we have posted this to make sure that we're meeting the state statute requirements, and the change is located on page 117 as a part of this ordinance. So rather than approving or making a motion to approve a resolution, this would be approving an ordinance. It would take effect immediately. Then, or I'll put home publication immediately. So then after that, you had also indicated that Councilmember Carlin was the wish to have serve, and so there's a second resolution that would appoint that person. That Councilmember Carlin was not listed in your consent agenda because frankly, there wasn't a seat yet. There has to be a seat for an appointment to take place. And so that's why it was put together in this fashion. Happy to answer any additional questions. Again, the main body, the first resolution or ordinance that I'm looking for you to take action on is on page 117.
Questions? As Todd said, the ordinance amending the St. Peter City Code for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board appears on page 117. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll move the resolution.
It's an
Second
ordinance,
it.
sorry. Ordinance.
I'll move the ordinance.
Thanks.
I'll still second it.
Any other questions now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Brand,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Ordinance is approved. Next up, we have the resolution appointing the Parks and Rec Advisory Board member. Todd.
Mayor and members, again, this is Councilmember Carlin, and the resolution is on page 118.
Questions? John?
Do our appointments to, not necessarily this one, I'm not as concerned, but our appointments to boards and commissions, do they undergo background checks the way we do when someone gets a pop license?
No.
Okay.
What are you insinuating, John?
I'm not saying anything. I said I wasn't concerned about this one.
Maybe you should be.
No.
All right. Okay. Anybody else? The resolution for appointing Ms. Carlin on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board is on page 118. Is there a motion for approval?
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Second it.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. That concludes our new business. Next up, we have a resolution calling for a closed session.
Mayor and members, the resolution is on page 119, and according to Minnesota Statute 13D.03, you were allowed to have a closed session to discuss labor negotiations. This would be with your police officers union, LELS 241, Law Enforcement Labor Services 241. I would anticipate a relatively short closed session, and then it would be my hope that we would be able to come back into regular session to take action and then complete the reports and the rest of the meeting. If that doesn't take place, we will certainly be back into regular session to have the reports and the appropriate adjournment. We haven't scheduled a separate room for you. Sometimes we do when we're early in process, but I think we're near the end of the process depending on deliberations of the City Council. And so again, I'd expect a relatively small meeting, and if approved, we'd clear the room, we'd have our closed session and invite people back in when that closed session is completed.
Okay. Questions before I ask? The resolution calling for a closed session to discuss the negotiations with the Law Enforcement Labor Services Local, the police officers, renewal of their labor contracts appears on page 119. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll move the resolution calling for a closed session for the purposes of labor contract negotiations with local law enforcement labor services number 241.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. We will now adjourn to closed session, and the time is, oh, right there, 7.
Go into closed session until we're gone.
Right. No, but the time is, we can include.
The time when we are about to go into closed session is 7:58. I guess the clock is working yet. It wasn't working before. From our closed session, we will now resume our open session regular council meeting on Monday, May 14th, 2018. It is 8:17 p.m. And Todd, do you want to go over what we talked about?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Mayor and members, included in a handout 119A, and then on the backside is a resolution. 119B is my recommendation relative to Law Enforcement Labor Services number 241 police officers contract. 3 primary changes or modifications to the contract that we have in place. It would be a 1-year contract starting on January 1st, 2018 through the end of the year, so December 31st, 2018. A wage increase across the board of 2.7%. And then there are a few technical changes, making sure the dates are right and the right name is under the right signature block, those kind of things. This is slightly more than what we've seen and that we've agreed to with other union groups and for non-unionized personnel. It's really driven by true primary factors, one of which is the relative wage within the marketplace. We have seen a couple of other LES groups and law enforcement employees and other similarly sized communities see some pretty hefty bumps when worth studies on compensation studies have been done over the last couple of years. What's happened for us has been that our relative standing in relation to those others have gone down a little bit, and that challenges us within the marketplace if we have new hires and other things. So that's one of the biggest issues. I'd also mention that one of the years when we had fantastic cooperation from all of the groups that you saw and have your public works groups, your law enforcement groups, and certainly your non-unionized personnel in 2010 when everyone took a zero or frankly had a higher negotiated amount and rolled back to a zero, means that at least in some instances as you do a trend line, we would have trended a little bit low compared to other communities that didn't have that same cooperative effort and good fortune. So those are 2 of the primary drivers that we have. The impact of this agreement is within your budget parameters for 2018. I think that's very important. It is within your budget parameters for 2018. And again, I'm happy to answer other questions if Mayor or members have any.
Questions? The resolution approving the contract by and between the City of St. Peter and Law Enforcement Labor Services Local 241 appears on the handout that we got on page 119B. Is there a motion for approval?
Move the resolution, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Corning.
Aye.
Mayor Zine.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Grant.
Aye.
Resolution passes. That concludes our new business. Next up, we have reports. I mentioned the groundbreaking for the hospital tomorrow, but by the time anybody sees this, it'll be over. So it occurred at 10:30 tomorrow morning, is the groundbreaking on Tuesday. Other than that, Todd, I think you have something to discuss on our goal session.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, Mayor members, that you did have a goal session. The report is included in your packet on page 120. So if you have any thoughts or ideas or anything certainly that any of you would like to mention, this is certainly an opportunity to do that. And your next goal session, based on your discussion at a workshop about a week ago, was that that workshop would occur on August 6th in place of a regular workshop. So goal session in place of a regular workshop on August 6th. If no one else wants to comment about the goal setting session, I don't have anything more to report than what is included in your packet, Mr. Mayor. And that's the last one that I have.
The coalition. council.
Oh, yeah. Barb, did you pass that out? Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the reminder. So we do want to mention that the Coalition Annual Gathering is this year, and we are sponsors with North Mankato and Mankato, as we've attempted to do in the past. So there is afternoon and evening that's dedicated to St. Peter, so we'll have 100-plus folks that will be downtown. They're going to come here and hear a little bit about housing activities that you have in place and also about daycare. Those are things that are important in all the coalition cities, and so the coalition folks have said, well, you have some stuff going on, so it'd be great if you would share with us about that. And then they'll have a chance to be downtown for a little while, and then a meal later out at Chankaska. And so we want to encourage you to attend and have a good showing from St. Peter, since we're partially sponsoring and hosting the event. Thanks, Barb. I guess that's the last one.
All right. Jeff?
One thing I just wanted to point out is a report last Wednesday, speaking of the coalition, I went up to the Capitol for the day. They had an ice cream social to meet with legislators on both sides of the aisle, specifically to ask for things like an increase in local government aid. There was a request for $10 million in additional money for local government aid, and that might still make it to one of the bills. We're not sure yet. Also, there was talk about some housing money that could be available for communities like ourselves for building workforce housing. Of course, there's also issues like transportation, Highway 14 bonding, that sort of thing too.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Mayor. Second.
All in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Very good.